Listen to that. The rain hitting the window. It's a rhythmic, honest sound. It does pretend to be anything other than water falling from a gray sky. Humans, on the other hand, love to pretend. We pretend we have control. We build fences, draw maps, and declare wars on things that don't even know what a border is. Today, I want to talk about a specific kind of pretense. A moment in 1932, where a modern military decided to settle a score with a bunch of oversized, flightless birds in the Australian outback. It's raining there too, sometimes. But back then, it was just hot, dusty, and incredibly embarrassing. There is a certain brand of arrogance that only humans possess. We think that, because we have split the atom and invented the internal combustion engine, we are the masters of the biosphere. But nature has a way of reminding us that we were just hairless apes with expensive toys. The Great Emu War wasn't just a skirmish. It was a philosophical clash. On one side, you had the dignity of the British Empire's military tradition. On the other, you had 20,000 emus who just wanted a snack. The outcome? Well, the birds didn't even have to try that hard to win. Imagine you were a veteran of World War I. You survived the mud of the Somme, the gas, and the relentless artillery. You were given a plot of land in Western Australia to start a quiet life as a wheat farmer. You retired. You just want the crops to grow. But then, the horizon begins to move. A brown, feathered wave of 20,000 emus arrives, fresh from their breeding season, looking at your wheat like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. They don't just eat the crops. They break the fences, letting the rabbits in to finish the job. It's a tragedy wrapped in a comedy. The farmers, naturally, were livid. They didn't go to the Ministry of Agriculture. No, they went to the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. They wanted firepower. They wanted the same machine guns that had defined the Western Front to be turned against the feathered pests. Pierce, perhaps looking for a quick PR win during the Great Depression, agreed. He sent Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery 2 Lewis guns, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and a dream of feathered genocide. It sounds like a movie plot, a very bad one. The Lewis gun is a fascinating piece of machinery. It's a light machine gun, capable of firing over 500 rounds per minute. It was designed to stop charging infantry in the trenches of Europe. It was never designed to hit a target that can run at 50 kilometers per hour and has the cognitive depth of a sentient toaster. Major Meredith arrived with his men, confident that this would be over in a few days. They saw the emus as a disorganized mob. They were about to find out that disorganized is actually a very effective defense against organized stupidity. The first engagement happened near Campion. The troops spotted a group of about 50 emus. The plan was simple: get within range, set up the Lewis guns, and let the lead fly. But the emus had a different plan. As soon as the firing started, the birds didn't huddle together in fear. They split. They scattered into small groups, running in every direction at once. The soldiers were left staring at a cloud of dust and a few stray feathers. Only a handful of birds fell. The military had spent hundreds of bullets to achieve almost nothing, and the rain, metaphorically, began to fall on their parade. Major Meredith began to notice something unsettling. The emus seemed to have a command structure. He observed that in each pack, there would be a large, dark-feathered male, standing nearly 6 feet tall, who would stay on watch while the others ate. When the soldiers approached, this leader would give a signal, and the flock would vanish. It wasn't just instinct, it was tactical brilliance by accident. The birds were using the vastness of the outback as their shield, making the heavy, tripod-mounted machine guns look like useless paperweights in the desert heat. A few days later, Meredith thought he had them. They found a spot near a local dam where over 1,000 emus were congregating. This was it. The big battle. They waited in silence, the Lewis guns hidden in the brush. They let the birds get close, practically within breathing distance. But then, the guns jammed. After only a dozen shots, the machinery failed. The emus, hearing the metallic clicking of human incompetence, simply walked away. It's almost as if the universe itself was rooting for the birds. Or perhaps, The universe just enjoys a good prank at our expense. Frustrated by their lack of progress, the military decided to get creative. If the birds were fast, the guns had to be faster. They mounted a Lewis gun onto a truck and went chasing after the flocks across the uneven terrain. It was a disaster. The ground was so bumpy that the gunner couldn't aim, let alone fire. One emu actually managed to get tangled in the steering wheel, causing the truck to veer off course and crash through a fence. At this point, the war had become a slapstick routine performed for an audience of confused kangaroos. Back in the cities, the press was having a field day. They didn't see heroes defending the frontier. They saw a comedy of errors. Journalists began writing about the emu commandos and the invincible feathered army. The public, already struggling with the hardships of the 1930s, found something relatable in the emus. Here was a group of outsiders successfully defying the government's heavy-handed solutions. The reign of criticism was becoming harder for the Minister of Defense to ignore. You can't claim military superiority when you're being outmaneuvered by a bird that eats pebbles to digest its food. By November 8th, just 6 days into the campaign, the first attempt was called off. Major Meredith's report was optimistic, to say the least. He claimed his men had suffered no casualties, which is true, unless you count their dignity. He estimated they had killed a few hundred emus out of 20,000. The House of Representatives was less than impressed. One member asked if a medal would be struck for the emus, since they had won every round so far. It's the kind of dry political wit that only flourishes when someone else is paying for the bullets. But the farmers were still losing their wheat. So, the military went back in for a second round. This time, they stayed longer and fired more rounds. Nearly 10,000. They claimed to have killed about 986 emus. If you do the math, that's roughly 10 bullets for every dead bird. In a world where ammunition costs money and farmers are starving, that's not a victory. It's an accounting nightmare. Meredith famously said, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." He was genuinely impressed by their ability to take a hit and keep running. The emus weren't just fast, they were durable. Their thick feathers and heavy skin meant that, unless you hit a vital organ, they would just keep moving. They were like feathered tanks, but without the fuel requirements. The Lewis gun, designed to stop humans who fall over when they're hit, was fundamentally the wrong tool for the job. It's a classic case of using a sledgehammer to fix a clock. Only the clock is running away at 30 miles per hour and mocking you the whole time. Nature doesn't play by our rules of engagement. Eventually, the military gave up for good. The war was officially over, and the emus remained the undisputed kings of the wheat fields. The government realized that machine guns were no match for the sheer scale of a biological migration. They switched to a bounty system instead, paying farmers for every emu they culled themselves. Ironically, this worked much better. In a single year, over 57,000 bounties were claimed. It turns out, if you want to solve a problem, don't send an army. Send a person with a financial incentive and a better understanding of the local landscape. Major Meredith returned to his regular duties, likely hoping everyone would forget about the time he lost to a flock of birds. But history has a long memory, and it loves a good laugh. The Great Emu War became a symbol of bureaucratic absurdity. It shows us what happens when we try to solve complex ecological problems with simple, violent solutions. We think we can shoot our way out of anything, but sometimes the target is just too fast, too numerous, and too indifferent to our status as the top of the food chain. Looking back from the comfort of the 21st century, the Emu War feels like a quirky internet meme, but there's a deeper layer to it. It's a story about the failure of technology when faced with the raw, chaotic energy of the natural world. We see this today in our wars on climate change, or our attempts to control the environment. We bring our metaphorical Lewis guns to a fight that requires a scalpel and some humility. We're still that major on the back of a truck, bouncing around and missing the target while the rain falls on our expensive equipment. The emus, for their part, didn't change a thing. They still roam the outback. They still eat what they want. They are a testament to the fact that you don't need a flag or a constitution to defend your territory. You just need to be persistent and remarkably fast. They didn't win the war because they outthought the humans. They won because they were simply being emus. There's something beautiful in that. They were just living their lives, and in doing so, they brought a modern government to its knees without firing a single shot. We tell this story because we need to be reminded of our own ridiculousness. In a world that takes itself so seriously, with its geopolitics, its high-stakes economies, and its grand narratives, the Emu War is a refreshing splash of cold water, or, in our case, a refreshing drizzle of rain. It reminds us that, at the end of the day, we are part of nature, not its owners. When we forget that, the universe sends 20,000 birds to eat our wheat and make us look like fools in the morning papers. It's a necessary ego check. So, what have we learned? That machine guns are bad at birdwatching? Sure, but more importantly, we've learned that the great in history is often just a synonym for loud. The Great Emu War was loud, expensive, and ultimately pointless. The birds didn't care about the history books. They didn't care about Major Meredith's career. They just cared about the rain that made the wheat grow. Perhaps we should take a leaf out of their book. Stop trying to conquer everything and just enjoy the harvest while it lasts, because the fences are always going to be broken eventually. The rain is starting to let up now, or maybe it's just getting quieter. Either way, the birds outside my window don't seem to care about the Australian artillery, and honestly, neither should we. They've got seeds to find, and I've got more stories to tell. If you've enjoyed this little dive into the absurdity of our species, maybe stick around. There are plenty more failures to discuss. But for now, just listen to the drops hit the glass, and be glad you aren't chasing a 120-pound bird with a jammed machine gun. Until next time, stay humble.